Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today we're doing some Christmas DIYs. You can find a full product list in the description below and all your crafting needs on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. For our first project, we're going to be creating a stocking. So I've got a stocking here that I'm using as a guide, and you can see I'm just using a pencil over the top of my drop cloth fabric. I'm tracing around the outside of the stocking so that I have a basic shape to work with. I'm then going to be using some scissors to cut this out, and this will be my template. We're going to be making 2 stockings today, so I will be cutting out 4 of this particular shape. Now, if you're going to try this, you can do it in any size that you want. You can use any fabric that you want. However, drop cloth is really cost effective, and we're going to be adding some things to it, so it definitely works for our project today. For our first stocking, I'm using Jami Ray Vintage's grain sack stripe stencil, and I'm going to very carefully hold the stencil down. I'm using a stencil brush. I've dabbed off a lot of the excess, and then I'm pressing down on my stencil, and you can see I'm being very careful to hold it in place. This can be a little bit fiddly, so you definitely want to be using a large enough brush so that the bristles are holding down all of the stencil. You are less likely to get bleed through this way. I am using Dixie Belle's Barn Red for my grain sack stripe today. If you are not very confident with this particular stencil, I suggest that you perhaps try this on a scrap piece of fabric first so that you get some confidence. Once my stripe is dry, I'm going to be using another JRV stencil. This is from the mini grain sack stencils. There's so many beautiful designs to use. I'm using some Umber silk mineral paint, and I have my JRV stencil brush. This is a 1/2 inch in size, and I'm holding my stencil down really well, and I am adding my paint in a swirling motion. I find that this works best with fabric, but you definitely want to have firm pressure so that your stencil cannot slip and move. So just take your time with this, and I am still offloading. Even though you want to use a little bit more paint when you're working with fabric, you still don't want to overload it too much, because that's when you get the bleeding underneath the stencil and the smudging. I'm then going to be using a stamp from IOD's Antiquities stamp, and I'm going to be pouring out a little bit more of that Umber silk mineral paint, and then I'm using a brayer to apply my paint to the stamp. Now, because I'm stamping on fabric with paint, this isn't going to be a very crisp image. It's going to be a little bit faded and worn, but that is perfect for what we're going for. So I'm going to position it over the top of my stripe, and now it looks a little bit like a postage stamp. After heat setting my paint with a heat gun, I have some 220 grit sandpaper, and I am lightly sanding my paint. This is going to give it a bit more of a vintage and worn look. You can skip this step if you prefer your design to look newer. Now I need to put my stocking together. I have a heat gun. I'm going to run some glue along the edges of my stocking. I have my design facing inward. I'm going to put the fabric over the top of that, because when we turn it inside out, I'll have a nice tidy edge. I'm going to press really carefully along the area where I have used that hot glue, and you definitely just want to be careful while you're doing this. Now, I'm using a hot glue gun here because this is just a decor piece. However, if you wanted to be a bit tidier, maybe you're making this as a gift, you could definitely come in and use a sewing machine to sew these together. This is just a quick and easy craft that you can do to make some home decor. Once I have each of the sides glued down, I'm not too worried if there's any spots that I haven't got glued down perfectly, because once I've turned it inside out, that will be really obvious, and I will be able to add a little bit more glue. So I'm going to very carefully turn my stocking inside out so that our design that we created is the right way out, and you can see that it has created a nice tidy seam around the edges. And anywhere, like I said, anywhere that I have missed some of the glue, I can come back in with my glue gun and add a little bit more glue to secure it in place. I'm next going to fold the fabric up the top inside the stocking itself. This is going to give us a tidier edge up the top. And once I have it folded over the amount that I want, I'm going to use my hot glue gun to put a few little dabs of glue on the inside to hold it in place. Whenever I'm working with drop cloth fabric, I always save the sewed seams. I always cut those off and I save them. And today's project is a perfect example of how you can use them. I'm going to add that seam from the drop cloth. I'm going to add that around the top of the stocking. I feel like this will make it look like a more finished project. And I will also use another piece of it as the little hook or the handle on the stocking as well. So I'm going to add some glue around the top edge and I will secure my drop cloth in place. Adding this seam really fits with the primitive look that I was going for this particular stocking, but if you wanted to have this be a little bit tidier, you could definitely glue another piece of fabric or ribbon or lace, whatever look you're going for. This is the time when you would come and add that up the top. So once I have my seam around the top all glued down, I need to have a look at the little loop handle that I want to attach. So first of all, I'm gluing the two ends together, and then I'm going to add a little bit of glue on the left hand side up the top, and I'm just going to add the little handle there and press down. I really like the frayed edges, but if this was a little bit too untidy for you, you could definitely trim more of it off. I'm actually happy to have some of those little pulls and strands showing. I feel like it again just adds to that primitive feel. For our next stocking, we're going to be using IOD's Rural Scenes stamp, and we're going to be creating a toile pattern. I've taken one of the stamp designs, I have it on some plastic, and I'm going to pour out some of IOD's Tomato permanent ink. It's a lovely red tone. I'm going to get some of that ink on my brayer, and then I'm going to roll that on some cardboard to offload some of that ink so it's not too overloaded, and then I'm going to roll my brayer over the top of the stamp. Once I have enough ink on my stamp, I'm going to tidy up any areas where I got ink that I shouldn't, and then I'm going to very carefully turn my stamp over and position it where I want it to go. I'm then going to carefully press down. You always want to have one hand holding that stamp in place while the other applies pressure. I also like to press down hard with my hands when I'm working with fabric. I'm then going to select another design and repeat the same process as before, inking it up with the brayer and then very carefully pressing down. I'm using the red today because I feel like that goes with Christmas, the Christmas in July crafts that we're going for, but you could definitely use the other inks that IOD has if you wanted to make this a more neutral piece. I didn't have a particular design in mind or a plan when I was adding these. I just sort of spaced them out evenly, and I also tried to think about the different layers. So with the sheep here, you will see that I do use the little mask that comes with the pack. This is going to protect my stamped image so that I can now come in and layer some ground over the top of the sheep without interrupting that image, without smudging it or obscuring it. So each pack comes with those, and as I said, there was no plan here. I just started adding images and scenes that I felt looked nice together. So this is just going to be up to you and what you want your project to look like. If you don't have access to these particular stamps, you could definitely use any kind of stamp or stencils like you saw me do with the first stocking to decorate your own stockings for your home. This is just one idea. I completely understand if you do not celebrate Christmas in July, but my hope is that these are videos that you will be able to save and return to when we get closer to Christmas. I really feel like it sneaks up on us every year, so it can be good to start your Christmas crafts or Christmas gifts. If you like to make your own gifts, it can be good to start them early so that you don't run out of time. Plus, for those of you who love IOD, you just know that they're going to come out with an amazing holiday release. So it's good to use what we already have now before we all get obsessed with the new items that they come out with. Once I had all of my stamps down, I heat set them with my heat gun. Now I need to put my stocking together, so just like with the first project, I'm going to lay down a strip of glue and then I'm going to put the other part of the stocking over the top, and I'm working in sections to make sure that my glue doesn't dry too quick and that I've got time to make sure that I have good contact with the other piece of fabric. Once I have all of my sides glued down, I'm going to very carefully pull my stocking inside out. Now I need to work on the top. So just like with the first project, I'm going to turn the top pieces of fabric over so that we have a nice clean edge up the top. And we're going to be doing something a bit different here. I'm going to trim some scraps of drop cloth that I had lying around, and I want them to be probably about 4 centimeters wide, and I'm going to be creating a little frilled band for around the top, or little ruffled edge, I should say. So I'm going to position it where I want it to go, and you can see here I'm just sort of testing it out to see if I'm going to like how it looks. I'm then going to put down some glue to start off my line, and I'm going to very carefully press it down. Just be really careful here that you don't burn yourself. I'm then going to fold the drop cloth over, and I'm going to apply a little bead of glue where I'm going to attach the fold on the front, and then there's also going to be some glue added behind it to hold it in place. And you'll see that I repeat the same process, a little bead of glue where I want my ruffle to attach, and also glue behind it to make sure that it's attached to the stocking. I felt like this was just a really nice touch. Even though this is still quite a sort of primitive, rustic French country design, I felt that that little ruffle just added a little bit of elegance, a little bit of shabby chic to this project. This is definitely something that you could leave out. You could add lace instead, or you could add a bow. You could take this in any direction that you want. This is just one example of what you could do. When I get to this point where I don't quite have enough fabric, I'm going to glue down the fabric that I already have there, and then I'm going to trim off some more drop cloth the same width so we can continue our design, and then I'm going to finish off the ruffle. So I've folded over the drop cloth, and I'm just going to repeat the same process for the back, adding that bead of glue, folding the fabric over. And again, you can definitely sew this into place. I'm just using hot glue here because this is just an example of an easy craft you can do at home. Once I have my little ruffle all secured in place, I'm going to take some more of that seam from the drop cloth, and we're going to add that to the top. I really feel like adding this just really finished off that design. So I'm going to add a strip of glue, and I'm going to glue that down in the front and on the back. And then once I have that down, I'm going to take some more of that seam from the drop cloth and create another handle just like we did before. And here are our finished French country stockings. I'm so happy with how these turned out, that we could take some drop cloth, some stencils and some stamps, a bit of hot glue, and create some lovely Christmas decor for your home. Even if you don't celebrate Christmas in July, hopefully this is an idea for you for when the festive season arrives. Let me know what you think of these in the comments. For our next project, we're going to be using these little wooden knobs that I had from a previous furniture project. I'm mixing up some of Fusion's Hotel Robe milk paint. I'm adding equal parts milk paint to water and stirring it really well. And then I'm going to add that milk paint to each of these little handles. Now, I started doing this and thought, well, there's already a hole in the bottom. I should really grab a screw to screw into that hole so that it makes it easier for me to hold each of these handles. So definitely a little tip there if you are working with handles, add that screw so that you have something to hold on to. So I'm going to add the milk paint to the entire little knob there, and then I'm going to use my heat gun to speed up the drying process. I want a lot of cracking here and chipping so that when I come in with my sandpaper, I get that chippy paint look. Now, if you haven't already guessed, or maybe you didn't notice in the photo for this video, we are creating some little tree bases for some bottle brush trees that I picked up at the end of the Christmas season last year. I felt like that these were a lovely rustic way of adding something special to those bottle brush trees that everybody has. Once my milk paint was completely dry, I am using some 220 grit sandpaper to sand back the chippy milk paint so we can get that lovely chipped paint worn effect. We're going for a bit of a rustic look here. I'm going to repeat that process for each of these handles. Next, we need to work on our trees. So they come with a little wooden base. I thought I was going to need my pliers to cut them off, but I was able to just sort of screw and work the bases off each of the trees so that the wire stem was showing, because that's what we need to be able to work into each of our handles. So once I've done that, I'm going to use some hot glue. I'm going to put it down into the hole where the screw would usually go in the handle, and then I'm going to push the bottle brush tree stem into place. Hot glue will be all that I need for this. This is just a little decor piece. If you're worried about them being able to hold the weight, you could definitely use some super glue instead, but I don't think it's really needed for this project. To finish these off, I'm going to use a Hessian ribbon that I got off Temu. I'm going to cut a length for each of the trees and just tie a simple bow. I went pretty neutral for this, but you could definitely use a more festive ribbon if you wanted. I could imagine these sweet little trees sitting on a tiered stand or even on a coffee table, any sort of vignette. I feel like these would be the sweetest touch. And here's a look at the finished project. I'm really happy with how these little trees turned out. I feel like it's taken something that's quite generic that you can buy in any store and given it a unique touch. Let me know what you think of these in the comments. For our final project today, we're using this little wooden box that I thrifted, and we're also going to be using some more of that wonderful Fusion milk paint that I've mixed up. I had in mind for this that it was just going to be like a little Christmas keepsake box, but I also felt that this would make a great tree base. So I'm going to go over the entire box with one thick coat of that milk paint because, as you may have guessed, I want to get that cracked and chippy paint look. So I only really want to do one coat. So I'm going to go around the whole thing and add that paint. And then I'm also shortly going to paint the inside of the lid so that if I have something sitting in the box and the lid's open, you'll be able to see that paint. But I don't want to go all the way down inside. Once I've finished painting the entire outside of the box, I'm going to get that heat gun and start to speed up that drying process. I went with white, obviously a neutral tone. If you wanted to make this a little bit more festive, you could definitely come in with a red milk paint or a green milk paint. I just wanted this to be a versatile piece that didn't necessarily have to go away at the end of the festive season. Once my paint was dry, I came back in with that JRV green sack stripe stencil and some more of Dixie Belle's Barn Red on my stencil brush, and I'm going to put a green sack stripe up the center of this box. I went with red to tie in with the Christmas in July feel that we're going for. And again, just really take your time with this particular stencil. You want to make sure that each part of the stencil is being pressed down, and I'm okay with the fact that it's a little bit rustic. I'm then going to be using IOD's Antiquities stamp. This is one of the designs from there. I'm inking it up with IOD's permanent black ink, getting rid of any excess ink, and then carefully pressing it down in the center. Once I lifted this up, I did notice that it was a little bit lighter than I wanted, but I thought that that would be fine. I've just going to come in now and give it a good sand to get that distressed chippy look that we want. And then once I have it the look that I want, I'm going to come back in and I'm actually going to re-stamp that front design just to get it to look a little bit darker so that you can see the design a bit more over the top of our grain sack stripe. So I'm going to ink that stamp up again, and then I'm going to very carefully position it over the top of my original image. Once that ink was dry, I sealed the entire box with Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in clear, and I used a microfiber cloth to buff off the excess. And here's a look at the finished project. This works as a sweet little keepsake box, but I love it with a Christmas tree sitting inside. I think that it looks really charming and sweet. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you enjoyed today's Christmas in July video and that it's inspired you if you do celebrate Christmas in July, or maybe you can save this video for later when it's actually the festive season time. Let me know in the comments if you had a favorite project from today. If you enjoyed today's project, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out to a friend that you think might enjoy it. If you haven't already, I would love it if you could hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.